Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
And we get some started tonight with some stories making headlines. Alabama softball coach Patrick Murphy named former Crimson Tide All-American Stephanie Van Brakel as the new Tide pitching coach today. In '06, Van Brakel became the first Tide pitcher to be named the SEC's Pitcher of the Year. Since her playing career ended, she spent 2 years as head coach at Birmingham Southern, 1 at Sanford. She did a great job there. She'll take over for Van Studeman, who was not retained following the 2011 season, is now the head coach at Mississippi State. And former Bama baseball player Alex Avila has been named the starting catcher for the American League All-Star team. How about that? He's the first former Tide player to make an All-Star roster since back in 1961. Through 68 games this year, he's batted just under 300 with 10 home runs and 46 runs batted in. That's big numbers offensively. Defensively, he's handled that pitching staff. Justin Verlander has raved about Avila. He caught his no-hitter earlier this season. And Alabama head coach Mitch Gaspard said the former Tide player continues to make the UA family proud. You can say that again. And good evening, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Rodney, of course, runs TiderInsider.com. Tider Insider TV, what, about 10, 11 years old now?
Yeah, 2000, 11 years.
Rolling along. People love it all over the state. We are presented this week, as always, by Buffalo Rock. Tonight, Diet Pepsi, ice cold. That's a good sound. Tonight, as advertised, we're doing our annual football previews. It's a 3-week series that'll take us straight up to the eve of SEC Media Days. And tonight, it's Alabama's first 4 games, Rodney. Now, we'll actually make our predictions on who we think will win later in the show, but we're going to break down the first 4 opponents. Let's begin with Kent State. Of course, the big news here is the fact that this is Nick Saban's alma mater. Darrell Hazel's the new coach. They haven't had a winning record since 2001, although they do have a decent amount of returning starters. 9 on offense, which is outstanding, 5 on defense. But again, Alabama, obviously a better football team. But the key here is the fact that this is where Nick Saban played college football for Don James. He graduated from Kent State. He's got a long background in the state of Ohio, having been the head coach at Toledo, having been an assistant at Ohio State. So this should be an emotional game for him as far as him getting emotional, which isn't very often, but I'm sure this will be a special game for him nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. And I tell you what, Gary, with the recruiting that Alabama does in the state of Ohio, it gets Alabama in the news a little bit up there. Anyway, I know Kent State probably not front page news, but at the same time, I mean, it does get Alabama in the news there for a week. And so that probably helps a little bit in terms of exposure. Again,
we'll make our prediction on this game and all of the first 4 games later on in the program, but we talked about it being Coach Saban's alma mater. Also, Alabama in past years has, we go back certainly to the Clemson game and the Virginia Tech game, opening against big-name opponents, and they went on to have great years last year. They didn't open up against a big-name opponent, opening up against San Jose State. Had a good year, but not a great year. Your thoughts on that? Would you rather come out of the chute against a big-time team or open up in a game that you know you're going to win?
Well, first of all, I like the big game. I like the exposure that you get when you play the Virginia Techs in Atlanta and the Clemsons in Atlanta, and, of course, next year Michigan in Dallas. I think those are great exposure games. I don't think it really matters in terms of what kind of season you're going to have. It certainly doesn't, it doesn't necessarily. Of course, if you win a big game like that, it could set the tone, but, it didn't have any impact on last season.
That's for sure. Well, you want big games. Game 2 on the schedule is a rematch from last year as 2 of college football's traditional powers square off. Alabama will travel to Happy Valley on September 10th for a showdown with Penn State. Joe Pa getting prepared for his 46th season as a head coach. I mean, I'm 47 years old. The guy's been coaching that long. This is a year for Penn State that is important to Joe Pa. Many feel like this will be his last season. He hasn't said that, but they've got some questions at quarterback again, much like they had last year. Sophomore Rob Bolden sought a transfer in January but was denied by Paterno. Meanwhile, quarterback Matt McGloin was ineffective down the stretch after he replaced Bolden at midseason. So they've got question marks at Penn State. Still, though, I think they feel like they're going to have a good football team. I think they feel like they're going to contend in the Big Ten. And we know this. This will probably be the last time Alabama visits Penn State with Joe Paterno as the head coach. This has been a great rivalry. Alabama's had the better of it through the years against Joe Pa. You know he's going to be pumped for this football game.
Yeah, but again, you look at them, Gary, and I know they're losing some guys up front. Penn State's always going to have talented players, but Alabama's a better football team. Alabama has more talent than this Penn State team. And, really the advantage Penn State will have will be catching Alabama a little bit early in the season and at home. So, those certainly are things that can work in their favor. And you never count out a Joe Paterno team.
I do think they're going to have an emotional edge in this football game. Now, you may be correct. Alabama may just have so much talent that it doesn't matter how much emotion Penn State brings to it. But stay tuned. I got some interesting thoughts on this ball game coming up later on in the program. Well, up next on Titv, will new leadership equal different results for the Mean Green? Probably not. We'll talk about the Tide's third opponent, North Texas, coming up. Also ahead, after a close call last year in Fayetteville. Wow, was it ever close? The Arkansas Razorbacks come to Tuscaloosa this season. There's some new faces, but I tell you what, they're thinking SEC championship. Still to come, we'll make our predictions for the first 4 games of the 2011 season, games 3 and 4, as well as the first 2. Rodney and I will differ on our opinions just a little bit. You'll want to stick around for that. We might even argue about it just a little bit. Who knows? Plus, we'll take your phone calls and get to your emails as well. 205-348-WVOA, 348-9882 is the number. Or email us at titv@wvoatv.com. We're talking football and lots of it. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by the fine folks at Buffalo Rock. We'll return in 2 minutes. They're green, and they say they're mean, but North Texas hasn't done much damage on the football field, so they're going to try again with Dan McCarney, a name you'll probably recognize, former head coach at Iowa State. Alabama played his team in the Independence Bowl when Coach Fran was here and beat them in a great game. Last play field goal, just missed by Iowa State. Dan McCarthy's been an assistant coach at Florida under Urban Meyer the last few years. Now, they do have a guy that can run the football, Lance Dunbar, number 6 rusher in the nation last season, but the defense, to say they struggled in 2010 would be an understatement. We saw them come in here just a couple of years ago and really get undressed. Alabama clearly the talent edge here, and you would think, and we'll make our predictions later on, but this will just be a tune-up for Arkansas the next
McCarney
week.
Could use Seneca Wallace in this one.
Yeah.
He really could.
Few guys.
Yeah, probably Joe Green, too.
Yeah, no doubt. That's right. Joe Green, I guess a North Texas alum. And they've had some players that have gone on the NFL throughout the years, but not enough of them probably to make much of a difference in that game. Well, coming up, we'll preview the Tide's SEC opener against the Arkansas Razorbacks, and later on we'll make our first 4 predictions for the other games. In fact, we're going to make that prediction for the Arkansas game coming up here in just a few minutes, and we'll take some phone calls as well. 205-348-9882 is the number, or you can email us, titv@wvoatv.com. Interesting game, Alabama and Arkansas. We'll tell you how we see this one coming up, as I said, later on, and also we'll break it down for you next. Stay with us. The big news in Fayetteville this season, a changing of the guard at quarterback. Ryan Mallett moving on to the NFL, being replaced by Tyler Wilson, who, when he got into the games last year, looked good, especially for starter. He lit them up. On defense, the Razorbacks returned 8 starters from a unit that wasn't bad last year, 36th in the country. They went to the Sugar Bowl, nearly beat Alabama, and the Hogs certainly feel like that they're capable of pulling the upset this year in Tuscaloosa. In fact, they feel like that's a game they need to win if they're going to break through and win an SEC West Division Championship and get back to Atlanta. Now, the Hogs, Rodney, when you look at their schedule, this is the way it's set up every year.
Yep.
They gun for Alabama. Now, Troy is a decent football team, but basically they play 3 lower-tier opponents getting ready for Alabama. They'll host Missouri State, New Mexico, and Troy before coming to Tuscaloosa. And, this is a game, as you look at the rest of their schedule, that does kind of set the table for them. It's possible they could lose to Alabama and still win the division, but that's a trend-setting game for both teams. Fortunately, since Nick Saban's been at Alabama, the Tides managed to get the better of the Razorbacks and win 2 SEC West Division championships in the process. But this is a good Arkansas football team.
And it's a scary Arkansas football team, Gary, because they're going to have a running game along with that. What's that number 7's name? Niles, the running back?
Davis?
Yeah, Niles Davis. That guy, he added some explosiveness in the running game last year late in the season. And Tyler Wilson, you mentioned it, Gary. Let's be honest. Had the refs not taken this game away from Arkansas, he'd have led them to a victory over Auburn. And, he was fantastic, unbelievable off-the-bench performance in that game. And, he's going to be, he's got a little bit now. He's got some experience. They got some receivers. Petrino's got the great offense. You mentioned the 8 guys coming back. They do have some guys to replace up front, though.
The thing about Bob Petrino, too, is this Alabama game's a measuring stick for him personally. You can tell. And he was really irritated 2 years ago when he felt like they didn't play well here in Tuscaloosa. And then last year, he felt like they should have beaten Alabama in Fayetteville. I think this is a game course, Alabama's oftentimes a measuring stick. But I really think for Bobby Petrino, this is a game that he's going to point to. As we said, 3 opponents at home they should win. Don't think they won't be game planning for Alabama pretty early on in fall practice.
And, Alabama, we expect the defense to be really good this year. Obviously, with the experience gained last year in some of those positions where they had lost players from the national championship team. But you look at this Arkansas team, Gary, they can score points. Kind of worried about Alabama's offense, as you head into a game like this, because even though Alabama will have a few games under its belt, still you're talking about a young quarterback, whether it's A.J. McCarron or Phillip Sims. You're talking about a young quarterback in that SEC game against Arkansas, a team that can score a lot of points. So the defense is really going to have to play well.
Right, it's something interesting about these first 4 games, too. Of course, Alabama has a unique nickname, the Crimson Tide. That's not anywhere else. But listen to these nicknames. Kent State's the Golden Flashes. You won't find that anywhere else. Penn State, not just the Lions, but the Nittany Lions. That's unique. The Mean Green of North Texas, and the Razorbacks.
You keep going to the beach, and I'm going to call you the Golden Flash.
I'm just saying, there are 4 unique nicknames that Alabama is going to play in these first 4 games. Our predictions on these games coming up. Okay, now it's time to talk recruiting, our most popular segment on the show. Every week I run into people and who's Rodney going to talk about this week? Well, this week we're going to talk about some interesting names, some names that we haven't talked about much on the program. You've had some stories on TiderInsider.com, but let's start with DeVario Montgomery out of Winter Park, Florida. We know this. When you're looking for receivers, this probably is past California and Texas as the most receiver-rich state in the country. And here's another guy out of Winter Park, 6'2", 205, has the measurables.
And Alabama needs receivers, Gary. It's a guy Alabama's been in the mix with for quite some time, and I've talked to DeMario. We had a story on him recently. He had told me a while back that Alabama was his favorite. Again, I know a lot of schools are in there, Florida State, and several others, but Alabama is certainly a team that he really likes a lot, so he's a guy to watch.
We've talked pretty often on the program about Danny O'Brien, and I know he's a Midwest guy, and Michigan and Michigan State are both after him, but at the same time, Alabama continues to really do well in terms of recruiting Danny O'Brien, and he keeps saying that Alabama's a player in this recruitment, and he's going to make an official visit.
He's from Flint, hometown of Mark Ingram. Bobby Williams has a lot of ties up there. Of course, Nick Saban also being a former head coach at Michigan State, obviously well known in that area. And Danny O'Brien, look at him. He's really well put together, Gary, for a high school kid. And he's a nose guard type player. Alabama, Tennessee, Michigan State, several other schools are in on Danny O'Brien, but he's supposed to visit Alabama at some point this summer. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, he's a big kid, no doubt about that. Another big young man is Matt Cochran out of Atwater, California. We've profiled him before, but he really likes Alabama a lot.
Yes, he loves Alabama. Gary, you look at him being from Atwater, California, and you wonder what connection could he have to Alabama. His dad is a native of the state of Alabama, grew up in Birmingham, loving Alabama football, and he's got a really good-looking list of offers when you look at UCLA, Stanford, Cal, several other West Coast schools, but he's waiting on one offer, the one from Alabama. He hopes he gets it.
All right, let's stay in Atwater and help me with this name, Rodney.
Aziz
Shitu?
Shitu, yes.
6'3", 280. Now, Cochran's on the offensive side of the line. He's on the defensive side. You talk about a kid with some measurables now. The scheme that Alabama runs, he looks like, on paper and on tape, a perfect defensive end in the Damian Square mode.
He's really good, Gary. When you watch him on tape, he's got a good first step. He runs plays down from behind, so he's got a lot of speed. He had 7 sacks last year, so he's a good pass rusher. He's a great kid, very smart. He was committed to Stanford. He decommitted from Stanford. He's got a top 10 right now, which, by the way, includes Auburn. Alabama's just now starting to kind of get in the mix because of the Cochran factor, Matt Cochran, their high school teammates. And he's really pitched Alabama strongly to Aziz, and, we'll see.
All right, let's go to the state of Texas to talk about our next prospect, linebacker Dalton Santos out of Van.
You need to go to YouTube and click in his name and watch him. I mean, this guy, when he tackles, he punishes people. It's like his coach told me last week. When he hits somebody, he's hitting them not as a dirty player, but he wants to inflict pain. And I mean, Gary, he's unbelievably fast for his size, 6'3", 245, 4'6", 40, and he plays really fast, and he's aggressive. I mean, he's a good-looking player. He was originally committed to Oklahoma State. He's got offers from Oklahoma, Texas A&M, a lot of schools in the Big 12, most schools in the Big 12, in fact. He said last week it's Alabama and Texas A&M were his top 2. His coach kind of thinks he's still more open than that, though, and we'll see what happens, but he's supposed to come with his dad on an unofficial visit to Alabama at some point this summer. Distance could be a factor, though, so the Aggies may have an edge.
All right, that's our recruiting update for this week. Again, if you want to ask a recruiting question, though, for Rodney, all you have to do is call in. Speaking of calling in, first up tonight, our good friend Joseph in Tuscaloosa. Joseph, welcome into the program.
Hey, how you doing, Gary?
Hey, Joseph.
Hey, let me ask you one question. Now, I'm a little concerned about this incident from last week. I mean, what was the motive of this guy, trying to make a hit and run on Trent Richardson?
Joseph, I really have no idea. I mean, all I know is what I read in the police report, that there was an accident involving Trent Richardson. The person that hit his car left the scene. Trent decided not to press charges, and as far as I know, that's the end of it. As far as what his motive would be, I'm guessing it was an accident. That's my assumption, and that's about all I can say about it.
Yeah, well, and he may have meant what was his motive for leaving the scene, and who knows, fear.
May not have had insurance, maybe a lot of reasons.
Fear.
You're right. That's always unfortunate when somebody's involved and doesn't stay around for the officers to get there. But I feel, sounds like Trent wants to move on and get ready for the football season. All right, let's go back to the phones and talk with John in Bessemer. John, welcome into the program.
Hey, man, what's going on?
Hey, doing well.
Hey, man, we're talking about Arkansas over Alabama. Y'all picking Arkansas?
We hadn't picked yet.
Y'all hadn't?
No, we just
Pick
talked about the
Alabama,
game.
man,
We'll make
because
our
Alabama
predictions
is the
later
best.
on the show.
But this, I'll call about that recruiting y'all talked about last week. Are they going to Alabama?
Now, do you have specific names, John?
No, not really.
Okay, did some recruits that we talked about last week, right now?
I don't even remember, to be honest, who all we've talked about. But, Alabama, John's going to recruit very well. They're in on a lot of top-notch players. I think, again, you're talking about another top-5 type class.
All right, going to take a time out here. We've got more phone calls. Phone lines are open. 348-WVUA, the area code's 205. Call in now. We'll be back after this. Time to talk about Rodney and I's favorite place to shop for menswear in Tuscaloosa, the Locker Room, located on the University Strip since 1964, home of the original elephant wear. You see Rodney and I wearing the shirts tonight. Hey, you can get by anytime, Monday through Saturday. See all the good folks, Alex and company over there at the Locker Room. They'll hook you up with some original elephant wear. It would be shirts, ties, pants, pullovers, shorts, or and more. Or you can browse their inventory online at www.locker-room.biz. It's the Locker Room, a Tuscaloosa tradition for right at 47 years now. Okay, go by and see them. All right, let's talk. We'll take an email, I should say, from Trey in West Blockton. How would landing quarterback Jameis Winston affect Alabama's standing with wideout Dorial Green-Beckham? There's a lot of speculation, Trey, about all these quarterbacks and what their impact on Dorial Green-Beckham might be. But, when you look at Alabama, for example, they have a freshman quarterback, a redshirt freshman quarterback, Phillip Sims, who was the #1 high school quarterback in the country coming out. You look at A.J. McCarron, who was one of the top 5 quarterbacks coming out the year before. So, if you're a wide receiver and you're looking at a school, you want to make sure that they have a quarterback that can get the ball to you. Alabama's got that. Now, will these other guys, Gunnar Kiel, Jameis Winston, have an impact? They possibly could, but I think a lot of that's overblown. I think a lot of that's internet chatter, to be honest with you. All right, let's talk with Gary in Fayette County. Final phone call of the night. Gary, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to know about Justin Shanks. What's his status?
Well, in terms of Gary, I think what you probably want to know is where he might end up. I've always thought it was probably going to be Alabama or Auburn. And, he's considered the top defensive lineman in the state of Alabama, one of the top in the country. Darren Lake, of course, who's a recent commitment to Alabama, is, some people think maybe, Gary, he might be not only the top defensive lineman in the state, but one of the best in the country. I talked to Matt Cochran, and we mentioned him a while ago. I don't know if you saw our story, but Matt's had an opportunity to go up against Eddie Goldman, the #1 defensive lineman in the country. He went up against Darren Lake, too. He said Darren Lake is every bit as good as Eddie Goldman.
High praise for sure. All right, we've already broken down the Tide's first 4 games. Coming up, our predictions for the first 4, including the SEC opener against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Stick around. We'll be back here on Titv right after this. All right, prediction time. A disclaimer, first of all, Rodney. We're not going to pick scores this time because once we get into the season, we'll still pick week to week, and we may change our minds depending on how the season's gone. We've done that before. But now the first 4 games of the year, beginning with Nick Saban's alma mater, Kent State. Rodney, I'll start with you. I don't think there's much need for question marks here on who we're picking.
Well, I assure you this. I won't change my pick come the first week. It's Alabama.
Yeah, I like Alabama. The question here is how ugly will it get, and the fact that it is Coach Saban's alma mater. Will he show a little mercy on the Golden Flashes? We shall find out. We like Alabama. Now, this is going to get interesting here, at least from my perspective. All right.
You go first.
Well, all right. Yeah, I will. I don't know if we can do it, but I'll. All right, go first, Rodney.
All right, first of all, let me say this. Penn State, you're right, Gary. I think they're going to play with a lot of emotion, but emotion can only carry you so far. If that offense can generate points to beat Alabama, I'll be disappointed, to be honest with you. Now, I know Alabama's got a young quarterback going into that game. That's going to be difficult, but at the same time, Alabama should be able to run the football and win this game.
Well, I think Alabama's a better football team, but as we saw last year, the best football team doesn't always win.
Right.
Alabama's, in my opinion, is a better football team than South Carolina, but they weren't that day. South Carolina mustered up something they didn't show the rest of the year. Right now, my instinct is that Penn State is gonna rally and win one for Joe Pa. I'm gonna pick the Nittany Lions in an upset at Happy Valley to knock off Alabama. All right, no need to waste much time here with Game 3. Alabama, North Texas. We both like the Tide to roll in this one. And then against Arkansas, the guy called in a while ago. We didn't make a pick, but he seemed to almost be stunned that we might pick Arkansas. Hey, pal, this is a team that nearly beat Alabama a year ago and went to the Sugar Bowl, if you'll remember. Well, it's a good football team.
I'm going to pick Alabama right now, Gary, and I will reserve the right to change this one.
I'm going to pick Alabama as well at home. I do think they'll find a way to win, but Arkansas is a good team. I'm amazed at what they've done the last couple of years, and people talk about them like they're a cellar dweller or something. They're a good football team. Next week, we'll break down Florida, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Then the following week, LSU, Mississippi State, Georgia, Southern, and Auburn. That July 19th week will be interesting with those three of those 4 games really going to kind of control the fate of Alabama's season. All right, so that's next week. Right now, it's time to go to dinner. We're headed to the Pottery Grill tonight in Northport. Remember, you can catch a replay of the show anytime you want to, WVUATV.com. See you next week.